The New Adam and Eve, by Nathaniel Hawthorne. We who are born into the world's artificial system can never fully grasp how little in our present state and circumstances is natural, and how much is merely the addition of the warped mind and heart of man. Art has become a second and stronger nature. She is a stepmother, whose sly tenderness has taught us to scorn the generous and wholesome care of our true parent. It is only through the lens of imagination that we can loosen those iron chains which we call truth and reality, and make ourselves even partly aware of what prisoners we are. For instance, let us imagine that good Father Miller's reading of the prophecies has proven true. The day of doom has burst upon the globe and swept away the whole race of men, from cities and fields, seashore and inland mountain regions, vast continents, and even the farthest islands of the ocean. Every living thing is gone. No breath of a created being stirs this earthly air. But the homes of man, and all that he has achieved, the traces of his wanderings and the fruits of his labor, the visible signs of his intellectual growth and moral progress. In short, everything physical that can show his former place shall remain untouched by the hand of fate. Then, to inherit and repopulate this empty and abandoned earth, we will suppose a new Adam and a new Eve to have been created, fully grown in mind and heart, but with no knowledge of their ancestors nor of the flawed conditions that had built up around them. Such a pair would at once tell the difference between art and nature. Their instincts and insights would immediately recognize the wisdom and simplicity of the latter, while the former, with its complex distortions, would present them with a constant series of riddles. Let us try, in a mood half playful and half serious, to follow these imagined heirs of our mortality through their first day's experience. No longer ago than yesterday the flame of human life was snuffed out. There has been a breathless night, and now another morning nears, expecting to find the earth no less desolate than at dusk. It is dawn. The east takes on its timeless blush, though no human eye gazes at it, for all the wonders of the natural world renew themselves, despite the solitude that now broods over the globe. There is still beauty of earth, sea, and sky for beauty's own sake, but soon there are to be onlookers. Just as the earliest sunlight gilds the mountain tops, two beings come into life. Not in an Eden like the one that welcomed our first parents, but in the heart of a modern city. They find themselves alive, gazing into one another's eyes. Their feeling is not surprise, nor do they trouble themselves with efforts to figure out what, whence, or why they are. Each is content to exist, because the other does too, and their first awareness is of calm and shared joy, which seems not to have begun that very moment, but stretched from a past eternity. Thus happy within an inner world they share, it is not at once that the outer world can force itself upon their notice. Soon, however, they feel the pressing need of this earthly life, and begin to explore the objects and circumstances around them. Perhaps no greater step remains to be taken than when they first turn from the truth of their mutual gaze to the illusions and shadows that confuse them everywhere else. "Sweetest Eve, where are we?" exclaims the new Adam, for speech, or some equal way of expression, is born with them, and comes as naturally as breath. "I don't think I know this place." "Nor I, dear man," replies the new Eve. "And what a strange place, too. Let me come closer to your side, and look only at you, for all other sights trouble and confuse my spirit." "No, Eve," replies Adam, who seems to have a stronger pull toward the material world. "It would be good for us to learn something about these things. We're in an odd spot here. Let's look around. Surely there are sights enough to throw the new inheritors of earth into a state of hopeless confusion. The long rows of buildings, their windows gleaming in the yellow sunrise, and the narrow street between, with its bare pavement marked and worn by wheels that have now rolled into a lost past. The signs, with their unreadable symbols, the squareness and ugliness, and regular or irregular flaws of everything that meets the eye, the signs of wear and tear, and unhealed decay, which set the works of man apart from the growth of nature. What is there in all this able to hold the slightest meaning for minds that know nothing of the artificial system implied in every lamp, post, and each brick of the houses? Moreover, the utter loneliness and silence in a scene that once sprang from noise and bustle must surely bring a sense of emptiness even to Adam and Eve, unaware as they are of the recent end of human life. In a forest, solitude would be life; in a city it is death. The new Eve looks around with a feeling of doubt and mistrust, such as a city woman, born of countless generations of townsfolk, might feel if suddenly carried to the Garden of Eden. At last her lowered eye spots a small tuft of grass, just starting to sprout among the pavement stones. She eagerly grasps it, and feels that this little plant stirs some answer in her heart. Nature offers her nothing else. Adam, after staring up and down the street without finding a single thing his mind can grasp, finally turns his face to the sky. There, indeed, is something his soul within recognizes. "Look up there, my own Eve," he cries. "Surely we ought to live among those gold-tinged clouds, or in the blue depths beyond them. I don't know how or when, but clearly we've wandered from our home, for I see nothing here that seems to belong to us." "Can we not climb up there?" asks Eve. "Why not?" answers Adam, hopefully. "But no, something pulls us down despite our best efforts. Perhaps we'll find a way later. But in the vigor of new life it seems no impossible task to climb into the sky." But they have already learned a sad lesson, which may yet bring them down to the level of the vanished race, when they accept the need to stay on the worn path of earth. They now set out on a ramble through the city, hoping to escape this unfriendly place. Already in the fresh spring of their spirits they have found the notion of tiredness. We will watch them as they enter some of the shops and public or private buildings, for every door, whether of rich man or beggar, church or state hall, has been flung wide open by the same force that swept away the dwellers. It so happens, and not unluckily for an Adam and Eve still in the attire that might better have suited Eden, that their first visit is to a fashionable clothing store. No polite and eager clerks rush to take their orders. No crowd of ladies tosses over the rich fabrics from Paris. All is deserted, trade has stopped, and not even an echo of the national call, "Go ahead," breaks the stillness for the new visitors. But samples of the latest earthly styles, silks of every shade, and whatever is most delicate or splendid for adorning the human form, lie scattered around, as plentiful as bright autumn leaves in a forest. Adam glances at a few items, but tosses them aside carelessly with whatever sound matches. He piche, or pishaw, in the new language of nature. Eve, however, let it be said without harm to her natural modesty, looks at these treasures of her sex with a bit more interest. A pair of corsets happens to be on the counter. She examines them curiously, but can't make sense of them. Then she handles a fashionable silk with faint longings, thoughts that drift here and there, instincts fumbling in the dark. "On the whole, I don't like it," she says, laying the glossy fabric back on the counter. "But, Adam, it's very strange. What can these things mean? Surely I ought to know, yet they leave me completely puzzled." "Pow! My dear Eve, why trouble your little head about such nonsense?" cries Adam in a burst of impatience. "Let's go somewhere else." "But wait. How very beautiful! My loveliest Eve, what a charm you've given that robe, by just throwing it over your shoulders!" For Eve, with the taste that nature shaped into her being, has taken a piece of fine silver gauze and draped it around her form, with an effect that gives Adam his first hint of the magic of dress. He sees his spouse in a new light and with fresh admiration, yet he is hardly at ease with any clothing but her own golden hair. Still following Eve's lead, he takes a mantle of blue velvet, and wears it so strikingly that it might seem to have fallen from heaven onto his noble figure. Thus dressed, they go in search of new discoveries. They next wander into a church, not to show off their fine clothes, but drawn by its spire pointing upward to the sky, where they have already longed to climb. As they step through the entrance, a clock, which the sexton wound up as his last earthly act, strikes the hour in deep, echoing tones, for time has outlasted his earlier children, and, with the iron voice man gave him, is now speaking to his 2 grandchildren. They listen, but don't understand him. Nature would measure time by the flow of thoughts and actions that make up real life, not by hours of emptiness. They walk up the church aisle and lift their eyes to the ceiling. Had our Adam and Eve become mortal in some European city and strayed into the vastness and grandeur of an old cathedral, they might have grasped the purpose for which its deep, souled builders raised it. Like the dim awe of an ancient forest, its very air would have urged them to prayer. Within the snug walls of a city church there can be no such pull. Yet some scent of faith still lingers here, the gift of pious souls who had the grace to taste a hint of eternal life. Perhaps they whisper a vision of a better world to their successors, who have become burdened with all their own cares and woes in this one. Eve, something urges me to look upward, says Adam, but it troubles me to see this roof between us and the sky. Let's go outside, and maybe we'll see a great face looking down on us. Wes, a great face, with a beam of love shining over it, like sunlight, answers Eve. Surely we've seen such a face somewhere. They step out of the church, and kneeling at its threshold give way to the spirit's natural urge to worship a kind father. But, in truth, their life so far has been a constant prayer. Purity and simplicity speak with their Creator at every moment. We now see them entering a court of justice. But what faintest notion can they form of the purpose of such a building? How could the thought arise that human kin, of like nature to themselves, and once bound by the same law of love that is their only guide, should ever need an outward force to enforce the true voice within their souls? And what, except a bitter lesson, the dark outcome of many ages, could teach them the grim secrets of crime? O judgment seat, you were not set up by the pure in heart, nor in the simplicity of nature, but by hard and weathered men upon the piled up heap of human wrong. You are the very mark of man's twisted state. On as pointless an errand, our wanderers next visit a hall of legislature, where Adam places Eve in the speaker's chair, unaware of the lesson he thus shows. Man's mind, softened by woman's tenderness and moral sense. Were such the law-making of the world, there would be no need for state houses, capitals, halls of parliament, nor even those small gatherings of elders beneath the shady trees, by whom freedom was first explained to mankind on our native shores. Where do they go next? A stubborn fate seems to baffle them with one riddle after another, which mankind posed to the wandering universe and left unsolved in their own ruin. They enter a building of stern grey stone, standing alone amid others, and gloomy even in the sunshine, which it barely lets in through its iron, barred windows. It is a prison. The jailer has left his post at the call of a stronger power than the sheriff's. But the prisoners, did the messenger of fate, when he flung open all the doors, honour the magistrate's order and the judge's ruling, and leave the inmates of the cells to be freed by the usual course of earthly law? No, a new trial has been granted in a higher court, which may set judge, jury, and prisoner at its bar all in a row, and perhaps find one no less guilty than another. The jail, like the whole earth, is now a solitude, and has thus lost some of its dismal gloom. But here are the narrow cells, like tombs, only drearier and deadlier, because in these the immortal spirit was buried with the body. Writings appear on the walls, scribbled with a pencil or scratched with a rusty nail, brief words of pain, perhaps, or guilt's bold defiance to the world, or merely a note of a date, by which the writer tried to keep pace with the march of life. There is not a living eye that could now read these marks, nor is it, while so fresh from their Creator's hand, that the new dwellers of earth know, nor their descendants for 1,000 years, could learn that this building was a hospital for the worst disease that plagued their forebears. Its patients bore the outward signs of that rot with which all were more or less infected. They were sick, and so were the purest of their kin, with the plague of sin. A deadly sickness indeed. Feeling its signs within the heart, men hid it with fear and shame, and were only more cruel to those unfortunates whose festering sores were plain to the common eye. Nothing but a fine garment could ever conceal the plague spot. In the course of the world's lifetime, every cure was tried for its healing and removal, except the one true remedy, the flower that grew in heaven and was powerful for all the sorrows of earth. Man never had tried to cure sin with love, had he but once made the effort. It might well have happened that there would have been no more need for the dark plague, house into which Adam and Eve have strayed. Hurry forth with your native innocence, lest the damp of these still aware walls taint you too, and thus another fallen race be born, passing from the inside of the prison into the space within its outer wall. Adam stops beneath a structure of the simplest design, yet wholly baffling to him. It consists merely of 2 upright posts holding a crossbeam, from which hangs a rope. Eve, cries Adam, shuddering with a nameless dread. What can this thing be? I don't know, answers Eve. But, Adam, my heart is sick. There seems to be no more sky, no more sunshine. Well might Adam shudder and poor Eve feel sick at heart, for this strange object was the sign of mankind's whole approach to the great troubles God had given to be solved. A system of fear and punishment, never successful, yet followed to the end. Here, on the morning when the final call came, a criminal, one criminal, where none were blameless, had died upon the gallows. Had the world heard the footsteps of its own nearing doom, it would have been no unfitting act to close the record of its deeds with one so typical. The 2 travellers now rush from the prison. Had they known how the former people of earth were trapped in artificial error and bound by their distortions, they might have compared the whole moral world to a prison house, and seen the removal of the race as a grand jailbreak. They next enter, unannounced, though they might have knocked in vain, a private mansion, one of the grandest in Beacon Street. A wild and mournful strain of music quivers through the house, now rising like a solemn organ note, and now fading into the softest whisper, as if some spirit that cared for the lost family were grieving in the silence of hall and room. Perhaps a pure maiden, the truest of mortals, has been left behind to sing a farewell for all humankind. Not so. These are the tones of an aeolian harp, through which nature pours the harmony hidden in her every breath, whether of summer breeze or storm. Adam and Eve are caught in rapture unmixed with surprise. The passing wind that stirred the harp strings has calmed before they can think to examine the fine furniture, the rich carpets, and the design of the rooms. These things entertain their untrained eyes, but touch nothing in their hearts. Even the pictures on the walls barely stir deeper interest, for there is something deeply artificial and misleading in painting that minds, in their primal simplicity, cannot grasp. The uninvited guests look at a row of family portraits, but are too simple to see them as men and women, beneath the mask of odd clothing and with features and expressions dulled, because passed down through ages of moral and physical decay. Chance, however, shows them images of human beauty, fresh from nature's hand. As they enter a splendid room, they are startled, but not frightened, to see two figures coming to meet them. Is it not eerie to think that any life, save their own, should remain in the wide world? "How is this?" exclaims Adam. "My beautiful Eve, are you in two places at once?" "And you, Adam?" answers Eve, unsure yet pleased. "Surely that noble and lovely form is yours. Yet here you are by my side. I'm content with one. Think there shouldn't be two." This wonder is worked by a tall mirror, the mystery of which they soon solve, for nature makes a mirror for the human face in every pool of water, and for her own great features in still lakes. Pleased and content with gazing at themselves, they now notice a marble statue of a child in a corner of the room, so finely crafted that it is almost worthy to be the foretold image of their firstborn. Sculpture, at its best, is truer than painting, and might seem to grow from a natural seed, by the same law as a leaf or flower. The statue of the child strikes the solitary pair as if it were a friend. It also hints at secrets of both past and future. "My husband," whispers Eve. "What would you say, dearest Eve?" asks Adam. "I wonder if we're alone in the world," she continues, with a sense of something like fear at the thought of others. "This lovely little form, did it ever breathe? Or is it only the shadow of something real, like our pictures in the mirror?" "It's strange," replies Adam, pressing his hand to his brow. "There are mysteries all around us. An idea keeps flitting before me. Would that I could catch it. Eve, Eve, are we walking in the steps of beings that looked like us? If so, where have they gone? And why is their world so unfit for our home?" "Or Great Father only knows," answers Eve. "But something tells me we won't always be alone. And how sweet if other beings came to us in the shape of this fair image." Then they wander through the house, and everywhere find signs of human life, which now, with the idea just raised, spark a deeper curiosity in their hearts. Woman has left traces here of her delicacy and grace, and of her gentle tasks. Eve searches a work basket, and instinctively slips the rosy tip of her finger into a thimble. She picks up a piece of embroidery, bright with imitation flowers, in one of which a fair maiden of the lost race has left her needle. Pity the day of doom came before she could finish such a useful work. Eve feels almost aware of the skill to complete it. A piano stands open. She brushes her hand carelessly over the keys and strikes a sudden tune, no less natural than the notes of the Aeolian harp, but lively with the dance of her yet unburdened life. Passing through a dark hallway, they find a broom behind the door, and Eve, who holds the whole nature of womanhood, has a faint sense that it is a tool meant for her hand. In another room they see a canopied bed, and all the trappings of luxurious rest. A pile of forest leaves would suit them better. They enter the nursery, and are puzzled by the sight of little gowns and caps, tiny shoes, and a cradle, amid the folds of which the shape of a baby's form can still be seen. Adam barely notices these small things, but Eve falls into a spell of silent thought from which it is hard to wake her. By an unlucky twist, there was to have been a grand dinner party in this mansion on the very day when the whole human family, including the invited guests, were called to the unknown reaches of endless space. At the moment of fate, the table was actually set, and the company about to sit down. Adam and Eve come uninvited to the feast. It has now been cold for some time, but otherwise offers them fine examples of their predecessors' cooking. But it's hard to picture the confusion of the unspoiled pair, trying to find proper food for their first meal at a table meant to please the refined tastes of a fashionable group. Will nature teach them the secret of a bowl of turtle soup? Will she urge them to tackle a leg of venison? Will she guide them to the delights of a French pastry brought by the last ship to ever cross the Atlantic? Will she not, rather, tell them to turn away in disgust from fish, fowl, and flesh, which, to their pure senses, reek with the foul smell of death and decay? Food. The menu holds nothing they know as such. Luckily, however, the dessert is ready on a nearby table. Adam, whose hunger and animal instincts are sharper than Eve's, spots this fitting meal. "Here, dearest Eve," he exclaims. "Here is food." "Well," she answers with the seed of a homemaker stirring in her. "We've been so busy today that a simple meal must do." So Eve comes to the table and takes a red-cheeked apple from her husband's hand, in return for her ancestor's fatal gift to our shared grandfather. She eats it without sin, and, let us hope, with no harmful effects for her future children. They make a hearty, yet moderate, meal of fruit, which, though not picked in paradise, comes rightly from seeds planted there. Their first hunger is satisfied. "What shall we drink, Eve?" asks Adam. Eve peeks among some bottles and decanters, which, since they hold liquids, she naturally thinks must be fit to quench thirst. But never before did fine wines like claret, hock, and Madeira, with their rich and rare scents, stir such disgust as now. "Oh," she exclaims after sniffing at various bottles, "what is this stuff?" The beings who came before us couldn't have had the same nature as we do, for neither their hunger nor thirst was like ours. "Please pass me that bottle," says Adam. If it's drinkable by any kind of mortal, I must wet my throat with it." After some protests, she picks up a champagne bottle, but is startled by the sudden pop of the cork and drops it on the floor. There the untasted liquid bubbles away. Had they drunk it, they would have felt that brief madness by which, whether sparked by moral or physical means, man sought to make up for the lifelong joys he lost by turning from nature. At last, in a cooling box, Eve finds a glass pitcher of water, pure cold, and clear as ever flowed from a mountain spring. Both drink, and it refreshes them so much that they wonder if this precious liquid isn't the same as the stream of life within them. "And now," says Adam, "we must again try to figure out what kind of world this is, and why we've been sent here." "Why, to love one another," cries Eve. "Isn't that task enough?" "Truly it is," answers Adam, kissing her. "But still, I dunno. Something tells us there's work to be done. Maybe our task is simply to climb into the sky, which is so much more beautiful than Earth." "Then I wish we were there now," murmurs Eve. "So no task or duty could come between us." They leave the welcoming mansion, and we next see them walking down State Street. The clock on the old State House points to noon, when the Exchange should be at its peak and offer the liveliest picture of what was the sole business of life for many of the lost world's people. It's over now. The stillness of eternity has spread along the street. Not even a newsboy bothers the two lone passers-by with an extra paper from the Times or Mail, holding a full report of yesterday's awful disaster. Of all the dull times that merchants and traders have known, this is the worst. For, as far as they were concerned, creation itself has gone bankrupt. After all, it's a shame. Those great tycoons who had just gained their longed-for wealth, those sharp dealers who had spent so many years mastering the most complex and artificial of trades, and had barely grasped it when the universal collapse was sounded by a trumpet blast. Could they have been so careless as to bring no currency for the land they've gone to, nor any bills of exchange or letters of credit from the needy on earth to the cash, keepers of heaven. Adam and Eve step into a bank. Don't jump, you whose savings are stored there. You'll never need them now. Don't call for the police. The stones of the street and the coins of the vaults are worth the same to this simple pair. Strange sight! They scoop up the bright gold in handfuls and toss it playfully into the air, just to see the shining worthlessness fall back in a shower. They don't know that each of those small yellow circles was once a magic charm, strong enough to sway men's hearts and cloud their moral sense. Here let them pause in their search into the past. They have found the driving force, the life, the very core of the system that had worked itself into the heart of mankind, and choked their original nature in its deadly grip. Yet how powerless it is over these young inheritors of earth's hoarded riches, and here, too, are huge bundles of banknotes, those enchanted slips of paper which once had the power to raise dreamlike palaces in an instant, and work all sorts of dangerous wonders, yet were themselves but the ghosts of money, shadows of a shade. How like this vault is to a wizard's cave when the all-powerful wand is broken, and the imagined splendor fades, and the floor is littered with bits of shattered spells and lifeless forms, once moved by spirits. Everywhere, my dear Eve, says Adam, we find piles of rubbish of one kind or another. Someone, I'm sure, took pains to gather them, but why? Maybe later on we'll feel moved to do the same. Could that be our purpose in the world? Oh, no, no, Adam, answers Eve. It would be better to sit quietly and look up at the sky. They leave the bank, and just in time, for had they stayed longer, they might have met some gouty old goblin of a tycoon, whose soul couldn't long be anywhere but in the vault with his treasure. Next they slip into a jeweller's shop. They are pleased with the glow of gems, and Adam wins a string of fine pearls around Eve's head and fastens his own cloak with a splendid diamond pin. Eve thanks him, and looks at herself with delight in the nearest mirror. Soon after, spotting a bouquet of roses and other bright flowers in a vase of water, she tosses aside the priceless pearls and decorates herself with these lovelier gems of nature. They charm her with feeling as well as beauty. Surely they're living beings, she remarks to Adam. I think so, replies Adam. And they seem as out of place in the world as we do, and we must not try to trace every step of these seekers, whom their Creator has sent to unknowingly judge the works and ways of the vanished race. By now, with their quick and sharp senses, they begin to grasp the purpose of many things around them. They guess, for instance, that the city's buildings were raised, not by the direct hand that made the world, but by being somewhat like themselves for shelter and ease. But how will they explain the grandeur of one home compared to the wretched misery of another? Through what means can the idea of servitude enter their minds? When will they understand the great and tragic truth, the signs of which strike their senses everywhere, that one part of earth's lost people lived in luxury while the masses toiled for meagre food, a sad change indeed, must come over their own hearts before they can imagine the first law of love to have been so fully broken that a brother should ever lack what his brother had. When their understanding reaches that far, earth's new children will have little cause to boast over her old, cast-off ones. Their travels have now brought them to the edge of the city. They stand on a grassy hill at the base of a granite obelisk, which points its great finger upward, as if the human family had agreed, with a lasting visible sign, to offer some high act of thanks or plea. The solemn height of the monument, its deep simplicity, and the lack of any common, practical use all deepen its effect on Adam and Eve, and leave them to see it through a purer feeling than the builders meant to show. Eve, it's a visible prayer, says Adam. And we'll pray too, she replies, Let us forgive these poor orphans of neither father nor mother for so foolishly misreading the meaning of the memorial that man began and woman completed on famous Bunker Hill. The notion of war is not native to their souls, nor do they feel for the brave defenders of freedom, since oppression is one of their unguessed riddles. Could they know that the green grass they stand on so peacefully was once covered with human bodies and stained with their blood, it would equally stun them that one generation of men could cause such slaughter, and that a later one would proudly mark it. With a sense of joy, they now stroll across green fields and along the edge of a quiet river. Not to follow them too closely, we next find them entering a Gothic building of grey stone, where the past world has left whatever it thought worth keeping. In the rich library of Harvard University, no student has ever enjoyed such silence and stillness as now fills its deep alcoves. Little do the current visitors grasp what chances they are wasting. Yet Adam looks anxiously at the long rows of books, those stacked heights of human knowledge rising one above another from floor to ceiling. He picks up a heavy volume. It opens in his hands as if eager to share its author's spirit with the fresh and unspoiled mind of the newly made mortal. He stares at the neat columns of strange letters, seemingly deep in thought, for the unreadable thought on the page has a mysterious link to his mind, and weighs on him like a burden. He is even painfully confused, and grabs vainly at he knows not what. Oh, Adam, it's too soon by at least 5,000 years, to put on glasses and bury yourself in the alcoves of a library. What can this be? He murmurs at last. Eve, I think nothing is so worth seeking as to unravel the mystery of this big, heavy thing with its 1,000 thin parts. Look, it stares me in the face as if it wants to speak. Eve, with a woman's instinct, is flipping through a book of popular poetry, surely the work of the luckiest earthly poet, since his verse remains in fashion when all the great masters of song have faded into oblivion. But let his ghost not be too proud. The world's one lady tosses the book on the floor and laughs brightly at her husband's lost look. "My dear Adam," she cries, "you look glum and dreary. Do throw down that dull thing, for even if it spoke, it wouldn't be worth hearing. Let's talk with each other, and with the sky, and the green earth, and its trees and flowers. They'll teach us better wisdom than we'll find here." "Well, Eve, maybe you're right," replies Adam with a kind of sigh. "Still, I can't help thinking that the answers to the riddles we've been wandering through all day might be found here." "It may be better not to seek the answers," insists Eve. "For my part, the air of this place doesn't suit me. If you love me, come away." She wins him over and saves him from the mysterious dangers of the library. Happy influence of woman. Had he stayed long enough to find a key to its treasures, as wasn't impossible, his mind being human in shape, though with a strength and sharpness never passed down, had he then and there become a scholar, the recorder of our poor world would soon have noted the fall of a second Adam. The fatal apple of another tree of knowledge would have been eaten. All the distortions, twisted arguments, and false wisdom so cleverly mimicking the true, all the narrow truth, so limited it becomes more misleading than lies, all the wrong rules and worse actions, the harmful examples and mistaken guides of life, all the clever theories that turn earth into a dreamland and men into shadows, all the sad lessons it took mankind ages to gather, and from which they never learned a lesson for their future. The whole pile of this ruinous knowledge would have fallen at once on Adam's head. There would have been nothing left for him but to pick up the already failed experiment of life where he left it, and trudge on a little further. But, blessed in his ignorance, he can still enjoy a new world in our worn out one. Should he fall as short of good as we did, he at least has the freedom, no small thing, to make mistakes for himself, and his literature, when centuries of progress shall create it, will not be an endless repeat of our own poetry or a copy of the images shaped by our great fathers of song and story, but a melody never yet heard on earth, and mental forms untouched by our ideas. So let the dust of ages settle on the books of the library, and in time let the roof of the building collapse on the whole. When the second Adam's descendants have gathered as much trash of their own, it will be soon enough to dig into our ruins and compare the literary progress of two separate races. But we're looking too far ahead. It seems a fault of those with a long past behind them. We'll return to the new Adam and Eve, who, with no memories save faint and fleeting glimpses of a pre-existence, are happy to live and be glad in the present. The day is nearing its end when these travellers, who owe their being to no dead ancestors, reach the cemetery of Mount Auburn with light hearts, for earth and sky now cheer each other with beauty. They walk along the wending paths, among marble pillars, mock temples, urns, obelisks, and tombs, sometimes stopping to ponder these creations of human effort, and sometimes to admire the flowers with which nature turns decay into loveliness. Can death, amid his old victories, make them feel they have taken up the heavy load of mortality that a whole species cast off? Dust like their own has never lain in the grave. Will they then realize, and so soon, that time and the elements have an undeniable claim on their bodies? Quite possibly they might. There must have been shadows enough, even in the early light of their existence, to suggest the soul's mismatch with its setting. They've already learned that something must be shed. The idea of death is in them, or not far off. But if they were to pick a symbol for him, it would be the butterfly soaring upward, or the bright angel calling them higher, or the child asleep with soft dreams visible through her clear purity. Such a child, in whitest marble, they have found among the monuments of Mount Auburn. Sweetest Eve, says Adam, while hand in hand they gaze at this lovely figure. The sun has left us, and the whole world is fading from our sight. Let's sleep as this sweet little form is sleeping. Our Father alone knows whether the outward things we've held today will be snatched from us forever. But if our earthly life is slipping away with the fading light, we need not doubt another morning will find us somewhere beneath God's smile. I feel that he has given us life, never to take it back. And no matter where we are, replies Eve, we'll always be together